Story 1. Seeking external validation and spending too much time daydreaming about achieving great success instead of focusing on the daily short-term goals required to build success. Story 2. Not having the confidence and support to know which career I wanted to pursue. I eventually figured it out closer to age 30. Story 3. Being complacent in working dead-end jobs, not exercising and feeling depressed. Story 4. Struggling to get my life together alone while I watched everyone else progress rapidly and help each other. Story 5. Staying in a relationship that is not progressing. Neither person seems to be progressing together or individually in life or any aspect of it, which is an absolute waste of time. Story 6. Many bottles of whiskey. However, I would not say they were wasted. What happened in my 20s is all part and parcel of who I have become. Story 7. Drugs, alcohol, and risky sports. But I had a lot of fun. Story 8. By giving the best years of my life to someone who never respected or loved me. Story 9. Feeling depressed and anxious and isolating myself because of it. Story 10. I was in an 8-year relationship from age 21 to 29. I left the relationship and started my own life. I wish I had worked on myself as a single person before jumping into that relationship, but I cannot change the past. Story 11. Thinking I had more time. I am 29, so I am reflecting on what I should have done. I do not have regrets because I was just living my best immature life by drinking, using drugs, attending raves, having hookups, and spending money I did not have. Now I have debt, I feel unhealthy, and my skin is not doing so great. Just be responsible and know that your 20s go by so fast. Story 12. I am 55 and I have had a pretty good life. At the time, I felt like I was wasting a bunch of my 20s, but looking back, it does not feel like that now. The best thing to do in your 20s is to have fun and have new experiences. Story 13. I followed my dreams and neglected my social life and career options to pursue a passion I am, to this day, objectively bad at. Story 14. Feeling behind all of my age peers and mourning not feeling normal. Story 15. Thinking I had to do things a certain way and being too scared to try new or different things. Try a new career or job if you do not like your current one. Start the new hobby. Go on the road trip. Meet all the people. Make the memories. Story 16. Worked a 9-to-5 job and was very serious instead of enjoying freedom and traveling. Story 17. Drank too much and did not have a financial plan, which continues to impact me in my 40s. Story 18. Depression followed my father's death. I spent most of those years underemployed and lacked the motivation to improve myself. I got an entry-level adult job just before I turned 30, and it felt like things were turning around when COVID-19 struck. Now I am about to turn 38 and trying to restart my life once again. I feel like I will be well into my 40s before I am comfortable with life and financially ready to settle down. If there were a do-over button that would send me back 20 years, I would press it in a heartbeat. Story 19. I took 11 years to complete college, went Van Wilder with it. In that time, I almost exclusively waited tables, did not acquire any other skill or save any money, and prioritized partying, drinking, and relationships over personal or professional development. I had to join the military to figure out who I was, who I did not want to be, experience the world, and acquire skills and job security that I currently enjoy. It was a long path, but I am here now and I dislike the person I was. Story 20. Trying to understand what is wrong with me and fix it. Always stressed, always feeling like I am not enough. I have been through many psychologists, psychotherapy, and even spiritual people and healers, but I am still struggling. I am doing fine at work, but I just cannot hold a job for long because of my stress. So yes, suffering is the answer to this, my friend. Story 21. Waiting for life to just happen instead of going out and taking more calculated risks, and not starting and committing to what I really liked. In the past 4 or 5 months, I've done a few things I wished I had the courage to do back then, such as changed my hair color, got my first tattoos, started being honest with myself about the steps I need to take to create the kind of life I want, cooking more at home instead of getting pre-made meals, socializing on a deeper level with friends and others, being truly open to change. Pursuing women I really liked and learning social skills. While I had some valid reasons not to do certain things to varying degrees, such as not wanting to get a tattoo in my early 20s on something that might be a fad, or having undiagnosed Asperger's syndrome, now classified as high-functioning autism, which could have some negative implications when interacting with people, experiencing things when I was younger was a rite of passage. Story 22. The majority of my 20s I was doing pretty well. In my late 20s I spent all my time drinking and ruining all the relationships I had, including with my children. Things are much better now and I don't drink anymore, but it still eats me alive. Story 23. I have never considered it wasted. I think of it as a learning experience. Story 24. By scrolling on Instagram and spending so much time there. Story 25. Being depressed and not taking care of myself. On my 30th birthday, I turned everything around, started going to the gym 5 times a week, and tried to stop smoking cigarettes. I am down from 320 pounds and I just hit below 270. Now I am happier and healthier. I microdose mushrooms and deleted all social media except Reddit. I wish I had started at 20, but I feel like 30 is not too late. Story 26. Early 20s on guys who were worthless or losers because I thought that was all I deserved. Story 27. Being sick, ruining the one real relationship I had, and gaining weight. Story 28. In the wrong relationship that took all my life force away. Story 29. Getting drunk, doing drugs, failed relationships, ruining my credit, dead-end jobs. I never thought I would live past 30, but I was wrong. I value all of my mistakes because they made me who I am today. It took a long time to fix everything I had messed up, and now I am well respected professionally and socially. My family loves me, and I have many crazy stories. Remember that time I was an underground messer? Story 30. I will be 20 in 2 years, but I plan to spend my 20s working hard, not partying or drinking. Story 31. Stopped exercising. Did not take enough risks such as moving, traveling, or meeting people. Did not seek therapy or medication. Let relationships degrade. Saved absolutely no money. Story 32. Abusive relationships. Each one was worse than the last, so I kept thinking I was getting better, but really I was only slightly less hurt. Finally, in a healthy, loving relationship now. Story 33. Was not serious at all about my future. I preferred quick and easy pleasure at the cost of long-term defeat. I thought of today, 2024, as something so distant that I should not care at all. Now I am an adult loser with nothing to show for all those years. Story 34. Chasing unhealthy relationships with troubled girls. Smoking weed with no end in sight. Gaming and drinking most nights alone without seeing anyone or doing anything. Trying to find jobs but failing in all regards. Never went to a club. Instead, worked a few jobs, saved some money, and did nothing but work like a robot with lots of money and no urge to spend a dime. Had friends online from overseas I played games with after work. It was a sleep, eat, work, game, sleep routine. Around age 24, I got evicted, lost my home, and was homeless for 3 years. Found a home at 27, met and dated a girl online, and thought things were perfect. At 29, we broke up. Now nearly 30, I hate myself, my life choices, the things I've done, and the path I chose. I regret the things I let go to waste and the things I didn't focus on. I have too many regrets. Story 35. Mainly alcohol mixed with recreational drugs and lack of exercise. At 27, I went to university to study computer science. I am now 36, alcohol-free for the past 2 years, and running 40 to 50 kilometers per week. I am not proud of my 20s, but you can improve the future. Do not look back. Story 36. Stagnant relationship. Stayed in it for so long just out of pressure to check the boxes that most people end up doing in their 20s. I just felt so cornered, and when we finally broke up, when I was almost 30, I felt like I could breathe for the first time since I was 19. Story 37. Work, sleep, rinse, repeat. Never did much else. Took me a pandemic to truly live, and I am having the time of my life nonstop. Story 38. Being obsessed with things I could never change, I will no longer try in any aspect of life and will simply waste away in my bed. Story 39. Being unsuccessful and using alcohol and drugs. Allowing myself to be in a harmful relationship with someone I should never have been with. Feeling resentment toward my parents and wasting time when I should have taken control of my life. Story 40. In a 10-year relationship, I ignored that I was gay while being shoved around and agreeing to sex I did not want to have in order to avoid his rage episodes. Story 41. I tried every beer, every liqueur, every liquor, every smokable drug, every nasal drug, and some others. I do not have enough fingers and toes to count how many times I dropped acid. Story 42. Being complacent in a job I hated and not going to therapy sooner. Story 43. I wasted my best years on a long-term relationship with a man who could not and would not love me the way I needed to be loved. Story 44. Fear of rejection to the point where I no longer bother to try. Story 45. I am 21. Honestly, I lost so much time trying to prove I am worthy of love, trying to help people who do not want to be saved, and loving the wrong people. Story 46. Being deployed. I feel this prevented me from developing romantic relationships and is why I am still single 20 years later. Story 47. For me, it was back in the 1990s, going clubbing every weekend and using lots of ecstasy and speed, then getting through university. It was all a bit of a blur. In my early 50s now, I do not regret what I did back then. I had a great time, but I would not do it again at my age now. Story 48. I felt like I wasted most of the last 3 to 4 years. The other day, I looked back at that time period and realized it wasn't as much the case as I thought. I went through a breakup, traveled a couple of times, and made a handful of new friends, some of whom I met while traveling. I still talk to them and am planning to travel with them again. I tried and gave up on a couple of hobbies, which is fine. I started addressing some health issues I have had this year. Though it has been unsuccessful so far, I have gotten the process started. I received a promotion I felt I did not deserve, and while it is stressful and I feel underqualified, even if I lose the job, it will help me get a job elsewhere with the experience on my resume. So, while one perspective tells me I am single, struggling at work, and unable to stick to a hobby, another side shows me how many experiences I have had recently, and that I do not need to take life at a different pace if I do not want to. I have always moved through life slowly and made changes slowly, which can sometimes be negative, but my 20s were filled with new experiences, love and heartbreak, and attempts to go outside my social bubble to meet people. I consider that a success, even if it does not always feel like it. Story 49. Not so much waste, but I was in medical school and training. At the end of the day, it was a great investment in myself, but I felt bad during the hard parts, especially when my peers from high school and college already had jobs and were traveling the world. Story 50. Threw away a promising career in the military. Went to war in another country, got wounded, and spent most of my 20s paying for it. Basically lived off painkillers, energy drinks, and hating the world for 5 years. Did not get my act together until I was around 27 or 28. Story 51. Not living. Not dating. Not trying new things. Not keeping in shape. Letting your incredible young mind, the power and beauty of your youthful body wither. Story 52. Went on a religious path. Joined the seminary and studied to become a priest. The best years of my life were spent celibate and engaging in self-abuse. Story 53. Being married to a man 10 years older who forced me to marry him when I was 18 and having children through forced sex. I love the children but hate how it happened. Story 54. Drinking and not setting proper goals because of it. It took me until age 33 to realize alcohol was a curse for me. I am now 312 days sober, though I still miss it. Story 55. Making drugs and alcohol my main focus, experiencing lack of sleep, and ignoring all aspects of my health. 1 year sober at 35 now though. Story 56. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Too many drugs, very little sex, always with music. Now I am old and still have very little sex, no drugs, but always have music. Story 57. Working. I took some time off and went backpacking in the Sierra Nevada. Story 58. Smoking cannabis and getting absolutely strong. No regrets at all. Story 59. After my mom died when I was 23, rather than take some of the life insurance she left and leave immediately, I foolishly chose to believe that maybe it would be the catalyst to get my father to change his ways. He changed, but unfortunately, he became slightly worse overall with his habits and toxicity. I'm not out of my 20s yet. Still have 3 more years, but I constantly feel guilty about not leaving when my mom provided me with such an amazing opportunity beyond the grave. Now, I am in debt, much of it due to him, and my family is barely scraping by. I was unwise and continue to pay the price for choosing to wear rose-colored glasses regarding my father. Story 60. Masturbating, drinking, smoking marijuana, trying to find myself. What a mess. Story 61. Started a 47-year-long career, married, bought a house, a fast car, a dog, and went on foreign holidays. I should have still been acting young, partying, indulging in excesses, playing the field. I sold my youth for a better retirement. Was this a good thing? The jury is out. Story 62. I didn't leave my parents' house until my late 20s and still haven't moved out, so I am foreshadowing it. Story 63. Working for a giant multinational company, Asda, also known as Walmart at the time, being paid very little and doing nothing to further myself, literally from age 20 to 30. Story 64. Following the Grateful Dead all over the country. And I would do it again. Story 65. Taking an education that did not interest me. I was too stubborn to admit to myself that it did not interest me. I am 54 now, and I have never worked in the field that I studied. As soon as I finished university, I started applying for jobs in other fields. Story 66. I spent those years raising a child, engaging in many activities outside of my comfort zone, and being responsible. It is shameful, I know. Story 67. I have an ex who was 27 when we met and is now approaching 40. I always felt she squandered her time pursuing situations that were just momentary peaks instead of focusing on the person she actually cared about. Story 68. I am 28 and I have been financially irresponsible, and it has caught up to me. My family has generational trauma surrounding finances, and it just dawned on me that I have a terrible relationship with money. I wish I had known earlier. I also wish I had asked for more help instead of feeling shameful about many things. Story 69. Night clubbing, mostly to dance, enjoy romance, talk nonsense, and have fun. No regrets. Story 70. I am 28 years old and finally went back to school for engineering last year. After I was 18, I was trying to be a producer, but I mainly made songs with my friends and smoked large amounts of marijuana while struggling with suicidal thoughts. Story 71. Usually too much partying, women, and other distractions. Story 72. Overall, likely just taking it too easy, not having any long-term goals to reach. Story 73. Nicotine, diazepam, hydrocodone, marijuana, 3,4-methylenedioxymethamphetamine, and alcohol. Story 74. Drinking was the root of everything wrong in my life. Story 75. Crystal meth, reckless casual sex, and traveling with hippies. Thank God that is over. Story 76. Instead of going to college, I traveled and partied while my body was at its peak. No regrets. Story 77. I spent more money partying, buying cars, and drinking than I saved for retirement. If I could do it over, I would keep my car for more than 2 years and not spend $170 a night, 3 to 4 nights a week on average at the bars. Just having a nice car, keeping it for 5 years, and drinking once a week could have set me up better. Story 78. My 20s were spent getting married, being pregnant, raising children, and moving. I also attended college and earned a degree that I do not use because the school no longer exists. However, the student loans are still very much there. Story 79. I have been working and studying very hard. I committed too much to wanting to have my dream job as a game developer. I missed out on many social opportunities because I was always too tired from being overworked or spending too much time studying at university. I was laid off twice and had to go through a lot of stress to retrain myself for another field with less stress and significantly better pay. Story 80. Having too much fun in film school instead of laying down a solid financial foundation for my future. Story 81. I would not say I wasted my 20s. I definitely got my life together. But in my late teens to early 20s, I partied very hard in college and lost sight of why I was there. I eventually turned it around and got back on track, but that took 2 years after college to make happen. I also got myself into a few toxic relationships and ended friendships with some good women who are now good wives to other men because I was chasing the thrill of being with the most attractive person I could find. Today, I am in my late 20s, and I am happy with how my life has turned out. However, I could have had a more stable dating life and would have finished professional school by now if I had not wasted the first 2 to 3 years of my 20s. Story 82. I sent emails during the pandemic. I was always excited to finish my work just to be able to play afterward. Story 83. Having anorexia and bulimia, I couldn't properly study because of it and totally wasted the time I should have put into education and working. Not to mention the social aspects. I am much better now, but that was really unnecessary and sometimes pains me to think about what I missed during my 20s. Story 84. Mature student. Completed a levels over 2 years to get into university. Moved to a city with an incredible party scene. Partied Wednesday through Sunday and severely affected my second year. Dropped out with significant debt, no qualification, no direction, and nothing to show for it beyond wild party stories. Over 4 years lost. It hit hard in my late 20s. I doubled down in my 30s, made a career plan, and worked my way up. It was incredibly difficult initially, as I felt like a failure and didn't believe in myself at all. I faked it until I made it. Story 85. I completely wasted my 20s by not dealing with the death of my mother. Instead, I jumped into a life of addiction and was lost for many years. I wasted my 30s as well. Today, I am 42 and have just reached 4 years of sobriety. I cannot get back those years or undo the mistakes I made and the people I hurt. However, I can and will remain sober for the rest of my life. I will do my best to make up for lost time. Story 86. Attending college for 5 years and earning an associate degree in accounting, while most jobs require a bachelor's degree. Story 87. Spent way too long being miserable and doing nothing to change it. Story 88. Drank 12 to 18 beers a night and got married at 21. At age 30, the wife was gone, but the alcoholism remains. If you think you might need help, you do. It is okay to ask for it. Story 89. Lip verse depend aware weather fear ad hoc shocking chief offbeat. Story 90. Pre-med gamble. All my savings gone and a delayed start to graduate school. I'm happy though. Story 91. Health 21, sciatica 23, high blood pressure 26, mental breakdowns 28, agoraphobia and acrophobia diagnosed. Story 92. Drinking too much. Yeah, the occasional celebration with friends is great, but waking up with a hangover on the weekends caused me to miss out on many opportunities to do even more fun activities because I was too hungover to get out of bed. Story 93. Not getting tested for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or medicated for depression. Going to college before I was ready. Story 94. Partying too much. It was fun, but I am sure there were better things I could have been doing. I did not really get my life together until I was 29. Story 95. Being married to someone I did not like but thought I needed. Divorced him the year I turned 30. Story 96. I wasted 2 years being in a relationship I should have known was not going to work a few months in. That time would have been much better spent single. Story 97. Second-guessing myself and my choices led to all-consuming anxiety and depression. I moved to another country to try to run away from my problems and lived through the pandemic. Story 98. I had a long family tragedy when I was 23 that ended with someone dying. It was an intense mind warp to experience that for a year while having to pretend everything was normal. Even after 4 years, I have not recovered from this mind warp. Story 99. Being comfortable in dead-end, stagnant jobs, I was content just earning my keep and going home. Now I am 30 and trying to earn more and learn more, but I am so behind most people. Story 100. Working and never allowing myself to take sick days or push for the time off I deserved. I once skipped a paid trip to Aruba with my friend because my boss said it was a blackout period. Forget the blackout, I thought to myself, I have to catch a flight. Story 101. I smoked from 19 to 28. Not only did I waste that money, but when I eventually quit and got into shape, I really only had 2 years of healthy 20s before 30 started affecting me. Story 102. Living through them with undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and all the anxiety that came with it. Yes, 7 out of 10 would definitely recommend to friends. Story 103. Drug addiction caused me to miss some of the best years of my life, unfortunately. Story 104. I got married then divorced. I had to start rebuilding my entire life at 30. Story 105. Letting my anxiety and obsessive-compulsive disorder hold me back too much. I wish I had gotten help earlier in life. Story 106. Working at a toxic workplace and working very long hours in the music industry. I wish I could get that time back. Story 107. Honestly, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and anxiety ruled my 20s. For a lot of that time, I could not even leave the house and was stuck in an abusive relationship. It makes me sad that I will never get those years back, and I am still struggling with the aftermath in my late 30s. Story 108. Hard drugs and alcohol. I was working my way up a career path but had a lot of fun along the way. Only fond memories looking back, to be honest. Story 109. I ignored depression and alcohol use disorder. I passed it off as being tired from college and full-time employment. I slept at every opportunity one got. Story 110. Working hard trying to succeed, but it did not happen. Story 111. Drinking too much and using drugs in the 1980s. One friend told me I drink like a fish. Then another said he is the fish. 29 years. I cooled off when my daughter was born, with my now wife and the daughter she brought into my life. Story 112. Trying to make feature films. Made 2 that will never see the light of day due to a greedy and toxic partnership. Hundreds of thousands of dollars spent. Remember to always use contracts when money is involved with friends. Story 113. Graduated college at age 25, so did not actually enter the workforce until 26. Feel like I am behind. Story 114. Being with the wrong person and constantly trying to make them happy, even if I was miserable. Things got better for a while, then she cheated on me and we got divorced. Story 115. Remaining naive and even childish while doing nothing about my mental health until it slowly led me to rock bottom. Story 116. I spent most of my 20s thinking I had time. I believed I would acquire all the skills necessary for work and other responsibilities while neglecting my own emotional and social needs. I forwent all the fun activities, thinking I would have time in my 30s. It only got worse after that, with few to no friends, no relationships to speak of, and still not having experienced all the heartbreak necessary for a person to develop emotional and social resilience. Sure, I may do well at work, but I am struggling everywhere else. Story 117. Xanax and opioids. More than 5 years sober now. Best decision I have ever made. Story 118. Working towards a dream job, only to be 30 and have a rare disease take me out of the workforce. Story 119. Partying like I would not see 30. Now I am 69 and I have not had a beer in 30 years. I would be long dead if I did not make the move when I was 39. Story 120. Everyone feels like they wasted their 20s no matter what they did. Story 121. By using alcohol and cocaine, I struggled for many years. I am now 30 years old and have been sober for 2 years. My life has changed significantly since achieving sobriety. I am doing things I never thought were possible. I would probably be dead right now if I had not stopped. Story 122. Drinking and making poor decisions in general. Not treating people with the respect they deserve. Do not be like me. Build wealth and invest in yourself so you are stable later. Even if it takes time and you do not get to have as much fun, just do it. Story 123. Dating the same wrong woman for too long. I hope she is doing well these days, but it just was not meant to be. Story 124. I pined over someone I would never have considered now that I am in my 30s. I also let my family's expectations weigh heavily on me. Story 125. Being married to a person and system that stifled who I am as a person was difficult. I am thankful I got out of there. Story 126. By applying to medical school multiple times, my last attempt provided the information I needed to switch career paths to where I am today. I feel like it was a waste because I am not where I wanted to be, but I also recognize that I would not have become the person I am today if I had not made the choices I did. Additionally, I realized after the fact that if I had been accepted into medical school, I would have hated being a doctor. Story 127. I felt lost and complacent in my mid-20s and did not do much about it. Then I spent a few years in a relationship in my late 20s that I tried to make work despite it not feeling right to me almost the entire time. I was also dealing with a lot of self-consciousness and shyness. Ultimately, my advice would be to take more action and trust your intuition if something feels wrong. Story 128. I've wasted no time and I have no regrets. I'm 26 now, and I could have definitely written many similar things that people have put out there, but I'm happy with all of my choices. They brought me here and I truly enjoyed the journey. Story 129. Working 40 hours a week to pay for satisfying girlfriends that I had no real future with. Not developing myself as an individual. Not doing therapy. Not building businesses. Networking with party people with no real future. Clinging to friendships that kept me complacent. Lifting weights to satisfy my ego and fuel my vanity. Not continuing my education. The only thing I did right in my 20s was develop a healthy lifestyle and find good hobbies. I suppose I got to experience the consequences of unbridled hedonism. Story 130. Dated a guy on and off for 5 years who treated me badly. Luckily, I wisened up and left at 25. Story 131. I drank alcohol, smoked cigarettes and marijuana, got too little sleep, and disappointed my boss and family. However, I laughed a lot during those years. Story 132. I became very ill with permanent chronic health issues. Then, I foolishly decided to wait until I felt better to pursue activities such as dating or finding a career suitable for my condition. Now, I am much older, completely broke, and have not been on a date since before I became ill. Story 133. Being mentally ill with serious depression and anxiety because of undiagnosed autism led me to barely get through school, but I could not handle jobs. I wish now that I had pushed to get the correct diagnosis earlier. Story 134. Depressed, unproductive, neglecting my physical and mental health. Nothing to show for it. Story 135. I was living in Florida in the 1980s when I was in my 20s. I bet you can guess how I wasted them. Story 136. Working for a cult. I was raised in Scientology and joined staff at age 15. See organization at age 20. I ran away at 28 and am now 32. I am happy with my life now for the most part, but I wish I could have experienced these things with healthy joints and the ability to drink without getting immediate heartburn. On the bright side, being in a cult with no access to the internet means I never said foolish things on social media that could come back to haunt me. Story 137. Abusive relationship. Moved abroad for him at 24. Came back broken at 29. Story 138. Chasing girls and sexual fantasies instead of focusing on one great girl and spending more time on my career goals. Story 139. I spent too long in a couple of relationships that, for various reasons, I stayed in well after I knew the right thing was to end them. I also listened to the voice in my head that told me I was ugly, stupid, unworthy, and more. I was my own worst enemy. It was not until my 30s that I realized I could be with men I had felt were out of my league. I could have been with very attractive men in my 20s if I had more self-esteem. Story 140. For 9 years straight, I went to techno clubs every weekend, drank alcohol excessively, and used drugs while also working a 4-shift system in a job I hated. Story 141. My 20s were spent working, attending college, drinking, and building a huge social network of friends. I still have many of those friends to this day. What was the question again? Story 142. I spent a very long time writing my master's thesis, which prolonged my studies by at least 2 years. I think subconsciously I was afraid of completing my studies and entering the workforce when I finally finished it. Story 143. Going out every night, 7 days a week, drinking and smoking marijuana during the day. Story 144. Speed, 3, 4-methylenedioxymethamphetamine, lysergic acid diethylamide, cannabis, mushrooms, a whole galaxy of multicolored stimulants, depressants, hallucinogens, and euphoriants. Consumption and sales. A distillery's worth of scotch, bourbon, vodka, tequila. Then it took me a couple of years to get my life together after quitting the pharmacy suddenly. Story 145. I assume you intentionally wrote waste in inverted commas to show alternative views on waste. I wasted it by being sensible with my money. I had friends who were out all weekend, drinking, using drugs, the works, and by the third week of the month they were broke. I still went out for drinks, food, dating, holidays, and more, but I never really got into extracurricular activities, nor did I have many expensive hobbies. For example, going to a football game, tickets, beer, food, transport adds up. I was comfortable having a couple of drinks after work, but I often spent my time gaming at home, which was significantly cheaper. I also looked out for holiday deals or did unusual things such as booking a trip to Turkey just after there was an attempted coup on the government. Consequently, it was very cheap because no one wanted to go. By the age of 23, I was in the process of buying my first flat, whereas friends and colleagues reached a similar situation at least 5 years later. Do I look back and wish I had thrown my money around a bit more? Possibly. But sometimes I did have crazy nights, and I don't exactly look back and wish I had them every weekend. I would never advocate scrimping, saving, and doing nothing, but I would say just be sensible with money, and more importantly, do what you like. I spent my time playing games because I enjoyed it, and while I don't look back fondly on that time, I don't regret it. Story 146. By engaging in minimal physical exercise, being inactive at work, and making poor dietary choices. Story 147. Being in a relationship going nowhere for 6 years during the prime of my life and making pivotal decisions based on his advice when I should not have. Lesson learned. Story 148. I got caught up too much in family drama and my mom's toxic relationships. Because of the endless screaming and crying at home, I wasn't living my own life. I feel like I spent my best years trying to save her while she kept making a mess. I should have just started going out and making friends. I only began going out in my 30s when I was in my first real relationship and realized I loved to dance and be social. By being too involved in her drama, I thought relationships were something to avoid, so I've been alone for a long time. I wasn't ugly or unattractive but didn't believe in love. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and working instead of studying gave me more freedom to escape the drama, so I didn't study longer. I got a certificate at 18 and started working low-quality jobs. I wish someone had told me to study longer. Now I'm struggling to get a good job instead of boring, underpaid work. When I started working at 18, I didn't even leave home but stayed to save her. At some point, she lost her job and I stayed with her until I was 30, paying for almost everything. Story 149. Ages 20 to 23, having the wrong friends. Ages 24 to 26, global pandemic. Ages 27 to 29, being a stay-at-home mother with the energy of an old sock in a litter box. Story 150. I really just wasted the winters. Seasonal job I loved. Hot skill set. Nowhere to move up to. Always poor for half the year. Low-paying, brutal winter work. Smoked and smoked. Got a different winter job where I found skills I didn't know I had. Progressed from there, got job offers, and now doing much better in a completely different industry. I miss the old life, but I don't miss being alone and broke for a job I loved that never took care of me. Tip for anyone that needs it. Intangible skills are incredibly important. I don't work in the industry I got my degree for, nor the industry I gave everything to for 15 years. Now I make more and have a better balanced workload than many of my peers. The ability to talk to people, honesty, head-down humility, humor, patience, and the ability to take hard work with a light heart are skills that will get you farther than some degrees. Story 151. Trying to find myself by doing many things and trying to please many people. Story 152. I don't think I wasted my 20s, not now, but at the time I thought I was. I was in relationships that helped define what I was looking for, but I was also single and exploring casual sex. I was deeply involved in making music, moved to a different state, and experimented with drugs. I discovered what I was made of and cultivated myself in unexpected ways. I wrote a lot, moved from bed to bed, painted, took photos, crocheted, programmed, worked at a gun club and learned to shoot shotguns, sometimes while under the influence of soma imported from India. Developed concepts. Although I didn't have a professional career at the time, I had what I needed to survive. I studied physics on my own, explored many subjects purely out of interest and without the pressure of school, philosophy, psychology, organic chemistry. I learned more outside of school than I did in school. I moved past the TV and video game phase and went deep into thought and reflection. I let loose and met a variety of people. I pursued filmmaking and worked as a production assistant and security on several film sets. I pursued the electrician field and wired many houses. Louisiana summers are hot in those attics, which tested my limits. I nearly passed out during some of those 14-hour shifts competing for livelihood against larger crews. I became a regular at a bar, worked in the service industry, helped a startup mobile car detailing company, bartended at the Joy Theater in New Orleans, worked as a phone technician, and eventually attended a coding boot camp. By age 30, I was a software engineer at a well-known technology company, where I am now. Sure, it would have been easier if I had not dropped out of college at 21, finished my degree, and started a family. I would have had more money and avoided some addictions and bad habits. But I actually lived and struggled, and I believe I became a decent person, empathetic and understanding of humankind. I have a wide variety of interests and intellectual depth because of my 20s. I could be better at any one thing if I had made it my main focus, but I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I followed my gut and went with the flow. Life is short, that's one thing I've learned, and you have to let go and avoid simply doing what's expected of you. Break the mold. Live your life and love yourself. This is all we have. Do what you can while you still can. You will catch judgment and criticism from those who don't do that. Who cares? None of this matters and everything reduces to zero in the end. So many times in my 20s, I saw my friends get married, have children, and climb the corporate ladder. I envied that, which was my biggest downfall. I had a ball in my 20s, and the only way I wasted it was by thinking I was somehow behind my peers because I wasn't making big money or having children. Story 153. Became an engineer and worked at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Went nowhere and did nothing. Story 154. Feeling entitled and not networking enough. I believed that good things would and should just come to me. Turns out you have to put in the time and effort to find success. Story 155. Playing video games for a little too long. Do not get me wrong, I love them. They have saved me from dark places, but I wish I were a little more controlled in how I consume that content. I wish I enjoyed them while also making time for other things. Story 156. I was lost. I didn't know what studies I should pursue, what type of life I wanted, or even what kind of partner would be right for me. As a result, I spent a lot of time partying, drinking, and using drugs, neglecting what truly matters: family and building my future. I think I didn't know myself well enough. Society expects us to choose a path at that age, but some of us aren't ready yet, I suppose. I'm in my 30s now, and looking back, there are many things I would like to say to my younger self. At least I had some fun. Story 157. Same way most people do, working in the wrong job or field. Not willing to take risks sooner to change my life and get out of the wrong job or field. Not addressing my personal issues and traumas. Making mistakes because I have never done many things before and was not willing to listen to people with experience. Story 158. Being mentally ill. I couldn't leave the house for almost 5 years without a panic attack. Now I am 29, and I feel like these years are missing. Story 159. Drugs and just being happy to cruise in low-paying jobs rather than pushing myself a little. Story 160. Half of my 20s I wasted sniffing cocaine and partying 4 days out of 7. The other half is currently being spent sober, 3 years sober, building a life for me and my family. Story 161. Having depression and thinking everyone cares about how I look, what I say, and what I do. Nobody cares. Almost everyone only cares about themselves. I have overcome my depression, so hopefully my 30s will be about accepting myself, getting married, and starting a family. Story 162. All I did was drink and eat. I lived paycheck to paycheck because I wanted to be the life of the party. By the end of it, I was almost 285 pounds. My 30s woke me up for the best. Story 163. Being an overthinker. Some people judge others. They are cringe. Bro, get a life. Cringe people have a great life. The 20s are the age of development for our characters. Your goal must be to be a better person every day than before. Do not be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes make us better. Story 164. Substance abuse. Mental illness. Living in a victim mindset instead of taking positive action. Story 165. I was complacent and shy about relationships for the most part. In my early 20s as a student, I was never proactively looking for a relationship. It's not that there weren't opportunities. I got approached a few times, mostly in bars, which didn't help because I was usually partying, drunk, and not really in a position to have a good conversation. My dance skills were terrible. I once had a friend say she thought I was the love of her life, but that was during a turbulent time in my life and it was carnival, so the memory didn't surface until a few days later, by which time it was too late. Then I entered the professional world in information technology, which tends to be male-dominated. I basically stopped partying, so my exposure to women was very low. I didn't like online dating because I believed it was mostly a looks-based popularity contest. This continued until my mid-30s. Not much happened, just work, hanging out with male friends, and being mostly content with life. Only starting in my mid-30s did I begin branching out. Many of my older friends were getting married, pregnant, or moving farther away, so naturally, their priorities shifted. I made new friends and signed up for Bumble. After 6 different first dates, I found the one. We're buying a house together and talking about marriage, kids, and what comes next. Story 166. Any form of drinking to blackout daily in 20s while working 80% of days. Nitrous oxide daily. Lysergic acid diethylamide and mushrooms 80%. Cannabis 10%. Story 167. Drugs and alcohol abuse. I wish I had known what I know now after 15 years of sobriety. Story 168. Spending too much time on the computer compiling my own Android kernels and ROMs so my phone would not overheat and would not need a daily reboot. And to remove bloatware. Jailbreaking. I wish I spent more time with people making meaningful memories, especially with those who have passed. Story 169. Being complacent, not taking risks, and letting my insecurities stop me from truly being myself. I am 28 now and really wish I had done more. Story 170. Drinking, partying, and chasing girls while girls were chasing me. Now I am a sober single father. Story 171. Making the effort to spend time with people who did not value me the same way was difficult. It was harder to tell who was genuine when I was younger. Story 172. Working in retail. Thinking I should try hard to climb the retail ladder. Story 173. I am too shy, but within a few months, I do not know how I developed the courage to talk to anyone. I reach out to many people and just talk about things. However, I still hesitate to join a group of friends and start talking. I do not know how to overcome this. I also feel comfortable with people online, whether it is text, call, or even a meeting, but when it comes to in-person interactions, I start to panic. Story 174. Nutting whatever I could the first 7 years. Falling in love with my now wife the last 3 years. Story 175. Stayed with someone who did not treat me well and eroded my self-esteem. Story 176. Allowing my mental health to deteriorate affects my quality of life. I struggle a lot with a mood disorder and chronic depression. Story 177. Watch. 2020 to 2021 psychiatric ward. 2021 to 2023 drug addiction. 2023 to 2027 prison. 2027 to 2029 COVID-19. Story 178. Brain cancer affects 20 million people. I don't know what I should do next to avoid wasting my time and energy. Story 179. Spent too much time and money trying to please toxic people. I should have cut those toxic people off earlier in life and spent more time with friends who actually care about me. Story 180. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll hardly seem a waste, given how dull my old age has been. Story 181. By not getting together with my wife sooner, I spent my 20s in multiple pointless relationships, probably due to the boom in dating applications around that time, most of which were not good for me. All the while, I knew that I always liked one girl and she liked me too. I am now married to her, with children, and we are living our best lives. I always wish that I could have had this with her earlier. Story 182. Applying for a master's degree and sitting at home doing nothing. Story 183. Being insecure and hard on myself when, in reality, I was at a time when I never felt or looked better. Now that I am 34, I realize what it is like to wish I still looked and felt like I did then. Story 184. Not really committing to anything or anyone. I changed jobs, careers, college, girlfriends, and friends. I moved house over 10 times. Story 185. Half with a man who was in denial about not being over his ex, and the other half with a literal psychopath. I never had the backbone to leave. Story 186. Did not get the best education. Should have tried a lot harder, gone to university, and actually done something. Story 187. Working hard to the point it is hurting physically for years, but I laid the foundation to raise the family I have now, almost fully grown. Story 188. Skyrim. If I had spent even a quarter of the time I spent playing that game on learning a real-life skill, I could play the guitar or speak a second language by now. I could probably have written a book too. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.